This video appeared the other day. I've been watching Marianne Williamson recently, but this guy appeared talking to her, and he's got these like black framed glasses. He reminds me of another guy who I've seen recently with some white framed glasses who wears a baseball hat. He's quite prolific, American guy, but I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But this guy here, it's just popped up when I've actually been writing to Marianne Williamson and RFK about this Google case, because Robert F. Kennedy's meant to be suing Google for taking his political videos down. I actually asked RFK if he would sue YouTube for taking his videos down because it affects all of our political rights. So like that's kind of cool. It's kind of like these. I mean, this video popped up on Marianne Williamson, and she's interviewing this guy with these black framed glasses, and it just keeps making me think of Google, like Google goggles, but like maybe it's not necessarily a good thing. Like Mark Zuckerberg's obsessed with these Ray-Ban goggly things, and it's like, why are they obsessed with putting the blinders on? In fact, Dr. John Campbell also had a video the other day. Well, he actually wears glasses, but so anyway. On the subject of the framework of Google, the legal framework of Google, and also the legal framework of the rights and the whole, the whole legal framework. Maybe the fact that, the prosecutors currently, have been misusing the law. For example, when they ignored two whole acts of law that was the specific laws that govern placement of advertisements in public, including painting, yet they pretended those acts didn't exist in order to secure a criminal damage charge with Angela Dutchfield. That's just an example of like bad framework being used by the CPS because they use it in a bad way. Although all those acts of law, once you understand them, they all provide so that right it applies for all. It's provided for in all of them, just like with the copyright ones. You apply the enactment, and it does what it does. It allows you to do certain things. You're not meant to argue or justify it. It's out so you can do it from the outset. You don't do something and then afterwards, then you have to defend what you did or explain it. It's almost like, how do you get to the shop? Well, you open the door, you walk out the street, you go down the road, and you go into the shop, you buy something, then you come out. If you couldn't do it, you won't be able to go there. You don't go to the shop and then afterwards explain that you were allowed to go to the shop and you had the right to do it. And that's the thing. All these things are provided for and allowed for because they've got a function, a role, a purpose, a reason. We are allowed to do it. It's... the police, they have this term when they take on witnesses, the police, assisting offenders when they grant them immunity. We are assisting offenders by creating a police force. We're not actually assisting offenders. We're creating, we're inventing, we're enacting offenders. We're saying here's a police force and they can be criminal only because they're upholding the law. There are many things like that house the other day that got demolished, an entire building. Even though you own the building, you might not, you own the building, but you can't do what you want because the councils tell you what permissions you can have and what you can do to buildings. But yet it ended up getting burned down and then demolished. They didn't have the right to do that. Even if it's your own private building, there are certain things you don't have the right to do, like demolish it if you haven't got permission. So there's an entire building there demolished without the right to do it, regardless of ownership. And most of those, they don't get a criminal charge. If you breach planning, it's usually a fine. They get fined or they get told to rebuild it, but they don't get branded a criminal. They should do, because they should look for intent. Usually you wouldn't demolish it if you didn't have the intent to. I don't know how you can say that you didn't have the intent to do it on purpose. This is a thing, with Criminal Damage Act. If you don't have the right from the council to do it, you don't have the right, privilege, or interest in the Criminal Damage Act. So therefore, it is criminal damage because you don't have the right, privilege, or interest, and you intended to do it. You see, that actually does make it an offence, but it never is treated as it. And that's the complete and total opposite spin to Angela Litchfield. Angela Litchfield did have the right to paint on the building for political purpose, and it's completely provided for in the acts of law. And therefore, when you take those into account and understand it, and then you read the Criminal Damage Act, then that act allows for it as well. Highways Act allows for it with placing signs at the side of the road, because it's the same thing, written in different acts. But it's more clearly explained and specifically permission and consent given, then you know what it is, and you can see how the authority word has meaning in the other two acts because it gives you the authority. Now, by ignoring those two acts, the town and country planning and statutory instruments, then they could claim that there's nothing that gives her the right, or nothing that applies any enactment or immunity, right? Now, when we get to Google, we're meant to have political rights. That's the whole point. Like when you pick up the telephone, when you're speaking to someone, when you send a letter in the post through Royal Mail, and so forth. Now, when we get to this Robert F. Kennedy issue, and well, all of us, because we've all got issues, at the moment with Google. It seems that it's only become an issue. I've never had an issue with my YouTube channel, and I've had it for 10 years. It's all become an issue now because there's a lot of heated political debate. And it's all seemed to have happened after this lockdown period. Now, the thing is, right, Google's private. So what? It's privately owned. But that doesn't give them the right to do what they want. Just like with the Google headquarters. Google headquarters, anyone can own it. Jeff Bezos could own it. Mark Zuckerberg could own it. Neil Mohan could own it. King Charles could own it, whoever could own it, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who owns it. Rights come from governments and councils, regardless of ownership and law as well, right? Now, the thing is that Google, Facebook, YouTube, Google, well, I'm Facebook, all on their websites, they've got policy. If you'll read through it all, it clearly states that they will comply with and abide by all of the legislation and the rights. So it's down to what that right means, because they said they'll comply with it and they'll apply it and abide by it, right? Regardless of whether it's, so, it's about arguing what that right means. It's not actually about what their policy means, because, but what they've done is they have to abide by the laws, but they've started making up policies that don't just say what the law is and isn't. The policies don't just say that Google will comply with the law and make you comply with the law. It's also, they've got some parts of the policy which aren't even legislation. They're just making up their own rules. And this is the whole area of conflict now. Because could YouTube write into their policy that even regardless of what the law says and regardless of what the government or council say, they can do what they want to their building even if they haven't got permission from the council? No, they can't make that into their policy because that's against the law. Could they have a policy where, if you're injured in the building, they could somehow, say no one can have access, or even try and make a special procedure like, or ambulances can only come in, once we open the door for them, or they have to go down a certain corridor or whatever. I don't think so. Because the certain medical rights and rights of citizens are overriding objectives, regardless of it's public or private and so forth. So this is when we get on to this whole Google policy. Now, the thing is, this is the thing what these pair of spectacles, this black pair of spectacles got me thinking about. So, this is the issue, right? The framework of Google, which is what this picture here got me thinking about. the framework of Google, right, which is YouTube. Google's YouTube, and YouTube's Google. Now, the thing is, when you go on YouTube, right, it's a website, it's a platform. You go on there, you don't have to, it's not private. It's privately owned, but it's not private. It's not private, it's not a private club, and it's not a members-only club. Anyone with free internet in a library, pub, free Wi-Fi connection, anyone can go on there and read all the comments like a newspaper without buying it, like you don't buy, without buying a newspaper, and watch the videos. So it's publicly accessible. The public has a right of access there 24/7. The public have a permanent right of access, right of way, for free, without charge, and without obstruction. So it's not a private place. It's not like a private house or a private club. Might be privately owned, but so what, right? So that's one important thing. Like a library is, well, the streets are meant to be the public's, but a library is a public library, right? But who owns it? Well, the council own it. But even if you had a shop, it's privately owned, but it's not like a house where, you know, if you just walk into a house, someone tells you to get out. You know, they're inviting you in. You're allowed to be in there, you know, and what can the shop say you can and can't do? Well, can they tell you can't say what you want in the shop? At least if you're talking to your mum in the shop and you're speaking freely, you know, and do you like these shoes, you know, should we go back and buy those other ones in that other shop? Do they fit? If they tell you to show up and not speak, there is certain freedom of speech which apply to the entire realm, to the entire country, to the entire nation. That's what free speech is, right? Now, this is where what does the shop, the privately owned shop, which is allowing people in, right, without discrimination, remember as well, there's discrimination laws. What can it and can't it put in its policy? It can't put things in its policy which are against the laws and against your rights, like medical rights, the medical access, the police access, fire emergency services access, and free speech is meant to be you can speak freely, no matter where you are in the realm. That's what it's meant to be. In a library, it kind of tells you to be quiet, but I don't think there's an offence for being allowed in a library that asks you if you will be quiet. Now, the thing with these policies are, they're a little bit like a lot of these websites that are popping up. Accept cookies, accept terms, consent. It's saying if you use this, you agree to our terms, which is just basically like if someone invites you into their house, right? Someone can invite you into a party, or then someone can tell you to leave their party if it's a private house, right? But you've still got free speech, and you can say what you want, because it might be the free speech that gets you removed from the house, but you have got the right to talk and the right to that free speech. It's their response and reaction if, because of your free speech, they no longer want to speak to you or want you in the house and ask you to leave. But note that that's a privately owned house, but also it's being used as a private house for private purposes, like a private club, members only. If it wasn't a private house, if it was a shop, it's different. And the law and rules governing shops under trading standards, consumer rights, and how you treat your staff, and all those things are different to a private house. And if you've got a shop, you're inviting people in. And if you're having the public in there, if it's public access, there are certain rights people have got. Now, on eBay, they don't like you speaking to other members and trying to sell things off the website or send payments out of the site, or they don't really want people talking about things. They try to control a lot of free speech, mainly to protect, your transactions and your money, and so you don't get ripped off if something doesn't arrive, and so the policy is valid. But there was this feeling about they didn't really want you talking about things, and they're always trying to get people not to trust each other anyway. But these days, this is the thing. Now, what they do is, because there's no law saying that you can't do something, they're getting us to consent, agree, accept all their terms, which is basically their own will, their own orders, their own rules. And I've said this before in other videos. It's like if you walk down the road, it's the public. If you walked past someone in the street and they said, sir, lie down, turn around 3 times, sir, jump, like a dog, give me the paw, now beg, if he was consent, sir, to my will. It's like walking down the road and someone getting you just to agree to every single thing they say or do. It's like, sir, consent. This is the type of attitude. If you own businesses and you have the privilege of employing staff, you get to tell them what to do, up to a certain extent of where their rights are and so forth. You give orders, you give commands, like on a Starship Enterprise. Jean-Luc Picard, number 1. Follow orders. I'm King Charles. Follow orders. Here are all my Knights of the Realm. Ben Bradshaw, the Knight. My soldiers, my Knights of the Realm. Go, obey. Kneel. Consent, kneel. This is it. So it's all about commands and rank and file and authority, the whole thing. Now, if you were just walking down the road and a random person walked past, would you just consent to every single thing they said? You might want to do someone a favour if they asked you, excuse me, would you like to tell me the time? Of course I will, sir. Hold on a second. Let's have a look. It's 7:15. That you've consented to tell them the time, right? But these platforms now are going next level, and they're absolutely dominating. In fact, they're going further than you don't really need company policies. You don't need any company policies at all, because that's what we've got the law for. It's the law. If you break the law, apparently it's illegal, right? And these companies are meant to have policies to remind us of the law and give notice and let you know what the law is. This is company policy. These are the trading standards and working rights, and you have to comply with them. That's the main priority. And then things like fire escapes, company policy. If you hear the fire bell, we're all supposed to go to, but usually you can't be prosecuted for it. There's no law that says if the fire bell rings in a company, you have to go to loading bay 6B, right? There's no law. You're not a criminal. But if you don't go there and you get burned, then they might argue that you can't claim on the insurance or something because you didn't follow the fire procedures. But that's a civil claim. You're not doing something illegal. You just might not be able to get compensation from your employer or something like that, right? It's about the money. Now, with all this consent to their policies, there is something. It's not just about the law and what you must do, regardless of the policy. Some of these laws and rights forbid and do not allow these private owners, companies and employers to do certain things, like demolish buildings. But then again, certain people are allowed to do certain things, at least without being prosecuted, like, write on a building or put notices on in paint for political purposes, which you actually can do, right? It says you can't be prosecuted or imprisoned, right? Now, I don't know whether you can be fined or not, or have a civil action, but it definitely says you're not a criminal and you shouldn't be prosecuted. And they weren't prosecuting people when they've been pulling these buildings down, so I don't think it's that much of a big deal not to criminally prosecute people who are petitioning who don't behave, or even when the law says they can do certain things. It says they can't be prosecuted criminally. Doesn't mean you can take a civil action against them and try and sue them for some money. But I would say it protects against that from the courts as well. But at least it's a step away from being criminally liable, right? Now, coming back to Google, right? With what Google is. So we know that all the material, all the videos, all the recordings, all the images that we are using for, at least for political purposes, that is meant to have immunity and protection over its use, right? We know that YouTube itself, it has adverts, but it's called Google Ads. It actually comes from Google Inc. It's Google Inc., Google, the company, and they've got policy for Google, and you can pay for them to show your ads, and the ads actually appear on YouTube within the video box of your videos and channel on the same website, YouTube, even though it's Google Inc., right? Now, when you upload any videos directly to YouTube, it's actually still regarded as a sign, symbol, word representation or something. So its legal terminology is still really an advertisement. Whenever you're promoting anything for your political campaigns or a message or anything, it's still an advertisement, but you don't have to pay to have a YouTube account. You don't have to... Anyone can actually have one, and it's free of charge. And as we said before, it's not private. Anyone can read it and read the comments, and like a newspaper. It's like a free newspaper. And it's also free to put things on there, right? When you upload, you're publishing on there. And when you upload your political material, you're publishing adverts for free onto YouTube. They're free ads. And you could pay to have them through Google Ads, which publishes them on YouTube. But it shows them to more people if you pay. So you're doing the same thing. Either you're advertising for free on there, and it's free to look at and read. It's effectively the same as a free ad newspaper, unless you decide to pay for ads on there. Now, the thing is, Google are trying to, Google, who own YouTube, are trying to claim that their policy says that anything that's against their policy, they'll remove it or take it down, right? And this is they're claiming it's a Google and YouTube policy. Now, if you read the Google policy and the YouTube policy, they're very similar, if not near identical. I read them. And one of the main things that it states and claims is that they will comply with all federal and state law. Now, YouTube, besides having Google, besides having YouTube, besides having this video and publishing platform, it's also a search engine. Right? Now, the search engine claims to be the best search engine. It claims to be the best, most extensive, and the most comprehensive search engine in the world. It claims that you don't need any other search engine. It outperforms all search engines and any search engine in the world. Why would you want to use Ask Jeeves or Yahoo if you've got Google, right? Now, the thing is, surely the Google Inc., the Google Incorporated policy must be the same, if not near identical, policy of content handling and permissions between Google, which is Google, the search engine, and Google, who you run your ads through with your paid ads, which is the ads appear on YouTube. You go on Google and pay for ads and they appear on YouTube, right? Now, as far as I know, Google is not omitting or hiding any of these things that it's taking down from its YouTube channel from the Google search engine. It doesn't have things that are on the dark web, like, weapons sales and things like that, but at least political opinion and elections, petitions and referendums, anything to do with elections, petitions and referendums, it is archiving them and showing them to you on your computer screen when you search for them, right? So how can it, and actually I've contacted YouTube, and not YouTube, sorry, that's the Google. Well, I've actually contacted Google and YouTube, but I have contacted Google sometimes to have things removed from the search engine, because they've got an option to say you can have things omitted from the results. And on a number of occasions, actually, it's been political content or political things, and they've said they're not going to remove it, right? But yeah, they're removing it from YouTube. But yeah, it's the same policy. Now, if Neil Mohan is correct, and if YouTube are correct, that they not only do they want to take these things down, they're saying that you can't have them on there, then that means that they're not going to have them in the search engine. And they're going to take them down from the search engine, but they're not. This is the same as what's happening with FlexiSex. They've got all these FlexiSex videos on YouTube, but they refuse to remove them. They won't remove them, yet my channel got pulled down for apparently a breach of policy. Not a serious violation, but after they claimed it was a serious violation afterwards, but it wasn't. There's no such criteria for serious violation, because it has to be harmful, dangerous or illegal acts, which it wasn't. YouTube itself is full of videos, and I report them and they will not remove them, but yet they're discriminating and then they're pulling certain things down. Yet they're clearly not applying the policy evenly or fairly through people, which means they're discriminating against people, basically. And when it comes to the search engine, which is the same policy, how come? You see, if they were omitting all these things from the search results and so forth, then how can I find my own website? Because if my YouTube channel is violating the policy, so my website is, but my website is still coming up in the search. In fact, for some strange reason, all the YouTube videos won't play at the moment on independent websites. There's some glitch or someone's done something to YouTube, so when you press play and you embed a video, it won't play it unless you go to YouTube. And I don't know why that is. I don't know what glitch it is, if they've done it intentionally on purpose to make a point. But, the whole point of YouTube was you could embed it in other sites. They seem to be not wanting people to embed them in other sites. They seem to be wanting to make people go to YouTube and not really wanting other sites anymore. But that's what the Google search engine was all about. It was all about finding other sites, cataloguing them. They seem to be liking these other websites less and less and less and less. In fact, they seem to be against independent websites as they're against independent people doing business with each other. They want everyone to block and ban each other and only go to Jeff Bezos, Amazon, or one of these main vendors now. But so I know that certain things have been censored from Google search engine. We know that some things are being not included in there, but we've never really believed it to be anything anywhere as near as much censorship was in China or Russia. So how actually is the censorship? Well, as far as I'm concerned, when I'm typing in things and looking for things that are related to my political material or things that I'm interested in, it seems to appear fine in there. So it's showing you it. It's letting you watch, look, and read it. And that's Google policy. So how are they saying that, we are taking it down and we absolutely won't have it, when it's on Google search? When if YouTube policy is near identical, if not the same as Google policy, particularly when you're putting Google ads on there and they're appearing on YouTube. So that is a big contradiction. Now, are they going to start removing more and more things from Google search engine, and then it can no longer claim that it is the most thorough and best search engine in the world for everything you might want to know? Maybe they're wanting to push it in that direction if they can convince everyone that you can't have it on YouTube. Maybe they were hoping to do that on Google. But then it's not really a proper search engine, is it? Because That's the thing about the search engine and research. What happens if you are doing a project on researching misinformation, for example? What happens if you had to do a university study paper on misinformation or false information, right? Well, you wouldn't be able to research it, would you? You wouldn't be able to go on Google and find any because it wouldn't show up. So it would be impossible to do a university study paper on misinformation. What if you're a police officer searching for, material for crimes? How are you going to search for it without Google? Are you going to the dark web or what? So therefore it undermines the police. This is the whole thing with legal proceedings. Google are not a judge and Google aren't a judicial authority. And this is the thing, they're removing loads and loads of content. The government are telling them to remove content. And trigger copyright claims on behalf of a claimant or another party, even though they've got immunity as a third party. But, what judicial authority have they got? And if you disagree with them, like in a legal claim, if you don't agree with their claim, then you've got a right to go to court, and who's to judge whether, until you're proven, guilty in a court or they made an order, then what authority does Google have to take it down until they've got a court order? This is the thing. It definitely is not a court. And to prove that, I don't think that the federal government have given YouTube any real judicial capacity at all, because they haven't, because with the copyright claims, they've actually invented ccb.gov, the Copyright Claims Board, which everyone goes to a proper judicial process and proper courts online now for copyright claims, although there are a lot less copyright claims because it's a lot easier you don't get strikes from YouTube as much now, and many, many people let you use the content modestly, and it's usually over the money, right? And a lot of people aren't monetized anyway. So, in fact, that's last summer, when, it's actually, we're coming out of summer now, but the year before, that's when the ccb.gov site was launched. That is actually even more. It's further consolidated and confirmed that YouTube is not a court and has not been given judicial capacity. Because the only two things that they moderate are copyright claims and community strikes anyway. So if out of those two things, one of them, they've created ccb.gov that deal with it, it not only shows that courts are there to... Actually, what it's proved is that not only are YouTube only a third party, it's proved that YouTube aren't a court. It's proved that it doesn't really matter what YouTube policy is, because with a copyright claim, it's about whether you've got the right or not, and nothing to do with the policy, because actually, because YouTube aren't liable, they're never the claimant, they're only acting on behalf of the claimant, and they have set up an entire business on basically enforcing these copyright claims when they're neither a police force and they're neither a court, right? So... And they've got multi-million dollar software to do that when they're neither a police force or a court, right? They're just doing it out of the goodness of their hearts for Warner Brothers or whoever, right? Because they've got this immunity and because they're making a hell of a lot of money out of it. So when you go to a court, it's always between you and the claimant, really, Warner Brothers or Universal Studios, right? So it's actually nothing to do with YouTube. So if it's nothing to do with YouTube over the copyright, why would there be an argument over your political rights or not with YouTube? There would be no legal argument over political rights with YouTube. Your political rights over copyright would only be between the claimant or not. And I believe that for political material, because it's exhibits of evidence used in proceedings with an authority, a judicial process, a proper long-established one, that the claimant hasn't got the right to raise copyright claim anyway, but that's a separate matter. So what it comes down to now is merely this community standards policy. Now, we know that the White House and Parliament have been telling them to take things down, even though Parliament have stressed And the Whiteouters have stressed that they don't use judicial function hardly anymore. Parliament has said that the House of Commons doesn't have judicial function or want judicial function anymore, and don't petition them over judicial matters, because even the House of Lords, even though you've got the right before the 1661 Tumultuous Petitioning Act, even before that you could have a pardon or appeal to the Lords. You didn't need that judicial appeal like jurisdiction act for that. None of them. They're just kind of making it up. Say, no, you have to go to Supreme Court. So Parliament can quite quickly say we don't have any judicial authority to make judgments. But then suddenly they're getting 77th Battalion to pull videos down and content from the internet over COVID and so forth. But they said that they don't have any judicial capacity. So why are they using it or even trying to create it? That's another contradiction, right? And God knows what's happening with Biden, but I think a judge made an order the other month in America that Biden had to not be telling them to. In fact, when you've got political rights and you're bringing casework to government and you're in the process of collecting signatures from the public to show evidence of public concern through your publishing of exhibits, and then you're going to try the informations and see who thinks that it's correct or not, and then have it debated in Parliament whether they think that it's right or not. Then, you're trying information just like a statement in a legal case, which could be wrong or right, but it's the police officer even who's interviewing you can't make a judgment on whether it's wrong or right. He looks at the statement, decides whether he's going to charge you or not, and then it has to be put to trial. Right? Now, YouTube is neither the police, YouTube is neither, a court or anything. So when you're trying information with the public for a proper legal process, YouTube is nothing. Yet it's got a policy as well. The publishers called, election misinformation. This is another term they've conjured up. There's no such thing as election misinformation. It's actually, when you listen to it and watch it, it's intervention. It's election intervention. It's saying you're not allowed to sabotage or disrupt election process. You can oppose elections. You can support or oppose them, just like in 5013C, illegal campaign intervention. YouTube themselves are intervening in the democratic process and live campaigns and cases by removing the videos. So it's breaking its own policy illegally. It has the cheek to say that no one can use YouTube for intervention, but it's intervening. So, but it's renamed it, and this is one of the big head twists that they're really trying to push now. Election misinformation. It makes it try to sound like that if you lie or give misinformation, you're breaking the law. But that's misinformation about an election, like telling someone that the polling station is, in the town hall when it's in the supermarket, or telling someone that the polling station's in the supermarket when it's set up in the school, right? Sending them the wrong way. That's what, when you get into it, what it means. But they're by misinformation, they're trying to make it sound like, you can't. They're slowly trying to roll it in that you're compelled to tell the truth about everything, when actually, even if you're compelled to tell the truth when you're interviewed by the police, but not all people do. And even if they do give a false statement, that can be an offence. But many people's statements are found not to be true in court simply by the jury not agreeing with it, and then they make a decision that, we don't think that's correct, we think the other person's correct, therefore the other person wins the case and they lose. But they don't bring additional charges of giving a false statement. In fact, you rarely get charges of giving a false statement, even though juries might decide that party A is right and party B is wrong. It's actually not brought as a criminal charge of giving a false statement. And even if it was, the police didn't do anything about it, and neither did anyone else. It's in trial. You're trying information. This is the whole thing. It's almost like in nature. If you are a scientist or an archaeologist, you're looking to find the truth. You find something in the ground. It might be a coin. Is it real? Is it a forgery? It's almost like the very presence of the coin would be illegal if it were a forgery. But that's the thing. You're going to investigate to find out, and you walk around the village and say, what do you think to this? I've dug it up. Do you think this is a real coin or fake? Well, let's go to an expert and get under the microscope. So you're in the process of finding out or debating or discussing. Now, if you dug up the coin, and you weren't sure, it's almost as if Google and YouTube and all these corporate entities want anything that they don't agree with, or anything that they can somehow, clinically pre-prove or preconceive of being wrong or potentially being wrong, and then them making it vanish from existence because they don't want it to anything in reality to exist that's wrong. But that means that they would vanish. Because on multiple occasions, ministers have been known to have been wrong, like about the pandemic. Police, crown prosecutors, all these people aren't perfect. They aren't faultless. In fact, all of them at one point have made a mistake or done something wrong, right? So they themselves would vanish. Now, they want to even solve this problem through AI by making everything faultless and perfect. They can't make themselves faultless and perfect. Themselves. They are in error a lot of the time, but they're attempting to try and make us, and this is the thing, this is why in the universe, when you live in a reality what is not perfect, it isn't a computer program, things don't always go right, it's called freedom. Right? The freedom of evolution, why we've got so many species, because animals wandered off the wrong way, which is the right way, which is the wrong way. There isn't really anything that is truth other than the concept of truth in a human opinion and mind, because every single thing is what it is. That's a bottle, that's this, that's that. It's our description of it and it's our opinion of it that projects right or wrongness onto it. In fact, it's just like in The Dark Side of the Moon. Like in the Pink Floyd album, The Dark Side of the Moon. The moon is the moon. There is nothing right or wrong about it. It's something. Just like when I speak. When I speak, I make a noise. The noise travels. It is a sound. If someone asks me a question, what is this, red or blue? And I answer blue or red. There's something there. There is something that exists, right? Now, it doesn't not exist, but it either, and the meaning of it is only interpretable by another human being. It's like the light on the sun. The sun shines on the moon, and one side is lit up by it, but because of its shape, the other side isn't. It creates a shadow, right? So it is, and that's nature. In a way, they want to try and get rid of this thing called doubt, which is almost the same as this dark side of the moon. To get rid of that, you'd have to have like a sun on each side of it, or two suns which cover both sides of it. But then you wouldn't be able to see any of the craters in it or anything, because it would be so bright and illuminated that it would be whited out. And in a way, that's kind of almost like not wanting there to be oxygen separated from water or soil separated from anything else. The thing is, these people now, they've got absolutely everything. Anything they want in life, they can either buy it with money, or they can blackmail or buy people. Come on, work at my factory. I'll give you money. Obey, consent, accept. And all the time, it's to get their way. They want it their way. And if other people question it, and if they were right and this other person was wrong, and in the acceptance of that point, then they wouldn't be getting their way with them anymore. Because if they challenge that consent or that question and prove the other person wrong, he no longer would have their way with them, right? So they've got an obsession with absolutely everything going their way or how they want it. And if that were the case, it would mean the universe was not free. It wouldn't be free, but the universe is free. And these people now have kind of appeared more recently in the last sort of 20, 30 years, particularly Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Bill Gates and people like that. And they're absolutely obsessed with it now. And this is why we've got these rights and liberties. We had the king was wanting to have his way with everyone, and they objected to it. Otherwise, we're going back towards slavery. It's meant to be going in the opposite way from slavery, So, there is Google and YouTube are calling us out on all these things, saying, "Oh, you're wrong on that. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong." But they are wrong. They are wrong, because what they're doing is they've got a policy on the search engine, and that policy is on there, and then they're actually claiming that, you can't have things with their policy, but yet you are having things with their policy. So they're lying. They're contradicting all the time. And this is what's happening with the claims against videos and strikes. Their computer systems triggering hundreds of thousands of strikes daily, if not millions, and some of those are false. They're not true. They're false claims because they claim a video contains something, and when you look at it, it doesn't. There's no evidence of it at all. It doesn't even exist in the video. So it's completely false, and they're actually punishing people for it. Now, if everyone knew everyone else who this was happening to, and they all teamed up together and combined money and evidence to lawyers in a court, you'd have potentially hundreds of thousands of people suing YouTube in a big claim. And in a court, if a company does a mistake once or twice, you could say it's an accident. But when they do it wrong 100,000 times, it can't be coincidence. And then you say, are they doing this on purpose? Are they pulling people's videos down? What they're actually doing is they are committing fraudulent claims. They're lying. They're basically lying. It's misinformation. They're saying this video contains COVID misinformation or this or that. And when you look at it, it was never mentioned once in the video at all. So it's nothing. It's actually, you're not challenging them on their policy. You're challenging them on statements issued. And this is the thing. They are daring to accuse us of lying and giving false statements when they are issuing hundreds of thousands of false statements on a daily basis, which should put them out of business. The number of, and this is why it gets really, really serious with big companies, and they've got these big important lawyers like, Paul Groves, because they're playing a big game. And, Congress has given them immunity, third-party immunity. Yes, for the content that someone put up, but as an organisation operating, it's like on tax fraud. It can't fill in false tax information because then it will be liable to IRS. It can't raise false claims about you because that's giving a false statement, right? They themselves are responsible for things that they send you and publish you. And when it's false, that is misinformation. Now, that is the thing. And Mark Zuckerberg's been doing it with Facebook on multiple occasions. Someone needs to shut these companies actually down and start some that aren't trying to take over the world. This is the problem. And RFK needs to ask his supporters to send him evidence or get the judge to subpoena YouTube to give over evidence. and we'll see what the extent of. They're not protected for false claims. And then when you see the extent of these false claims, then they're the ones. So what's the argument about? Well, they've got a policy claiming that we are putting false information on there when they're doing it to themselves. They're issuing false statements out, on a mass scale. And in order to challenge them, we need to be able to have these videos up on political matters and speak freely in order to discuss it and debate it. They're in contradiction of their own policy. They're in breach and contradiction of their own policy. And it isn't private, it's privately owned, but it's public access. And it's free, it's like free ads. And I think that free ads, that right to petition, freedom of liberties, applies to publications and free ads. The newspaper might have a night law, you even have to have things checked, but only because it's not as big as YouTube. It actually doesn't change the fact that that law and liberty is meant to cover publishing. And they can only publish through newspapers. Newspapers are privately owned and always have been privately owned. It's made to be used on there, and it always has been. I don't really know where YouTube are claiming this whole private business over in the Hill. The Hill are going on about a private platform. So what? So what? It's a private building, but they can't demolish it. They don't have the right to. They don't have private ownership. You might as well just say that the owners all wear their slaves and go back to slavery. They don't own us. I think that they actually believe that you're consenting. And, when you click the button, I consent. They think that if you did have any rights, you'd be giving them up when you consent or agree to their terms. They can't make you, they're not allowed to get you to give up the rights because they can't. It's effective. Why does Google and YouTube say we will comply with state and federal law, right, and foreign law? As if they couldn't comply, as if their policy could say we don't comply with state and federal law, we're not going to. I mean, that would be a joke. It's not like they've put in their policy just so, what shall we have in the policy? Shall we? It's like they've got a choice. Oh, shall we comply with state and federal law or not? I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to do that. No. Even if they didn't have that published in their policy, they've got to legally comply with it, as if they couldn't. That's what's joke about it. They always ask the policy will comply with state and federal law. Yeah, like you couldn't. Like you could say that you're not going to comply with it. As if. Who do they think they are? Oh, it's policy. We'll have to do it. No, you'll do it anyway, whether it's policy or not. This is the thing, There's some serious problems with these people. And it's because they've got these chairs sat on stages with Mr. Beast sat there with his chocolate bars, throwing out Mr. Beast bars and prime drinks to everyone, making billions, and everyone's clapping. And then the Hill go, oh, it's a private website. And the Hill have said it's a private website. We're all right then. And Russell Brand won't publish anything, What lawyers is Brand even using? Not intelligent ones. Not ones who are going to do anything with 20 million that they could do useful to get people's videos back on there, that's for sure. This is the problem. You get an studio audience in clapping, and then, you think you're God. Whoa, we're taking over the world. It's Mark Zuckerberg on Ed Ted. I'm Mark Zuckerberg. I've got millions, billions. I'll just rebuild Hawaii. No, I am the law. I am the government. No, you're actually not. You're not.